All right. Are you ready to start?
Yeah, so let's try this. I've never really told anybody, like besides people in my family. So here we go. My name's Catherine. When I was about 11 or 12, we lived over in like a historic district. So that's kind of how I'm aging myself, is by where we live. And my parents went out to dinner. Not a big deal, that happened a lot. They had friends whose daughters spent the night, well, the evening, I should say. And they were a couple years older than me. We put my younger brother and sister to bed, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to do a seance?" I thought it was complete nonsense. I mean, I was in Catholic schools, and my father, when he was younger, I was the 10th kid, so he needed money. But when he was younger, he was a minister in a church. So I had a very, churchy background, for lack of better words. But I'm like, yeah, this will be fun. Let's try this. And I don't really remember what we did to kind of, we call it calling a soul to us, is kind of what happened. I just really don't know what we did because I thought it was a farce. I'm sitting there holding their hands like this is stupid. And just as soon as I'm thinking that, my vision went black. I couldn't see anything. And a voice that wasn't mine, this little tiny voice was like, "Who are you?" And I start going, "That wasn't me. I can't see." And I couldn't even hear my voice. It wasn't my voice coming out. And I start to kind of, panic. I'm a little kid, but I'm also raised kind of logically. So I'm like, okay, think about this. What is actually happening? So I'd say at that time, curiosity took over to where I'm like, okay, what is happening here? Because I clearly couldn't see or talk to the girls. So I need to just focus on what I could see. And what I could see, well, first it was more of a feel. Before my eyes could see anything, I could feel it. Like it was my right ankle was in so much pain. Like I couldn't move it. And when I would move, you could hear it and I could feel it. There was a chain. I was chained and you'd follow it and it was to a wall. And as I'm feeling around, I'm kind of the darkness started fine tuning itself, right? And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not blind, focus, right? I'm just in a very dark. And when I was a kid, I would say I was in a dungeon. But in hindsight, it was definitely more like some creepy tower, right? Because there was a window way up high where no way I could reach it. But that's all I could see was a little bit of moonlight coming in. So I just start paying attention. I'm thirsty, my throat hurts. I'm hungry. And no matter what these girls asked him, who are you? Where are you? Why are you scared? This kid, he was a boy. He never said that. I knew that. I'm guessing I don't have to explain. And this boy, all he could talk about is where's my mom? And I never called my mom that. So right there was weird. Why is my mouth saying my mama? It was very weird. Well, where's my mama? And help me. And then it started getting really scary because he started talking about free me from the wizard. And that term, it's odd. I will give you that. But he was definitely young. And whether or not this was a wizard, I don't know. But whoever had him meant him harm. I felt it in every fiber of my being. And then I started getting scared again, because I couldn't leave. I was ready to leave. I'm sitting there like, this is funny. Okay, bring me home. It wasn't working. And then I heard a door. It didn't sound like a door, but I knew instinctively what that was. And then all I could see was this flame getting closer. Like, what flame? I don't know. In my mind, I'm picturing one of those handhelds, so that's kind of how I do it. But it was getting closer. I never saw anything. And I just start panicking. I mean, I wet myself. I'm crying. I'm pulling from the wall. I'm like, get me out of here, please. Get my mama. I just kept saying that. Get my mama. Get my mama. And then before I even knew anything, it's like all I knew was fear. So the next thing I knew, I'm me and I'm on the ground and these girls are shaking me. And it wasn't just the boy. I was covered in pee and I was sweaty and they really didn't know what to do. They were like, what's going on? And I'm like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. Just call my mom, just call my mom. And so they didn't want me to tell my parents what happened. They didn't. But they helped me take a bath and they made me cocoa. And I didn't call my parents, of course. But as soon as they got home, I told them. Now, my dad thought I was utter dreaming. My mom made me pray the rosary a couple times in penance. It was different reaction. But I never saw those girls again. And when my younger siblings got a little older and tried to hang out with their younger siblings, because they were like in the same block, my parents just would not allow anywhere near those girls. So while, and they both passed quite a few years ago, but even when I would, tell them, they were like, no. And I'm like, yeah. And why couldn't we hang out with those girls? And I told my brother about this. And he's like, yeah, do you know why? And I'm like, no, nobody would ever talk to me about that. Their parents were supposedly into that kind of stuff, into seances, and they would have people come to their house. And so I'm guessing the girls were trying to mimic what they saw. But I was never the same after that because 2 months later, it was literally like 2 months. I wasn't even 12. And I dreamt when I watched my two cousins dreams. And a week later, that's exactly what happened. So I've definitely learned there's things out there you don't really want to mess with. And that's terrifying, but it's also kind of led me on a pretty neat spiritual journey too. So maybe that.
Oh my god. This is absolutely amazing. This is like one of the coolest stories I've heard so far, and this is really, really cool. Yeah, yeah, I think I have so many questions about it. Um, well, first of all, that must have been like a really like traumatizing experience, right? But
It was,
yeah,
yeah. My mom sent me to therapy because I never really got over that. So I just kind of had to learn not to tell people about things that happened to me, that nature. So I was like, okay,
yeah.
I'm dreaming, but no.
Well, I see what you're saying. And honestly, this is one of the reasons why we started this podcast. We wanted to provide safe space for everyone to share their supernatural stories, because a lot of people with such experiences and supernatural gifts, or curses, depending on the situation, they
Exactly.
yeah, they tend to feel a little bit isolated because they can't really share it with many people around them. And like I was talking to this other guest earlier, and she brought up something very interesting. She said that she has like a really good intuition, um, like a sixth feeling, and she
Oh,
said that
definitely.
yeah, and she said that it's really, really hard. Like she's not like she can always feel when something bad is gonna happen, but she never
Mm,
tells anyone because she doesn't want to make them feel bad too. So
yeah.
it really is pretty isolating. So let me ask you this: it's very interesting how you described all those experiences. How you were in like what was it, like a bell tower?
It definitely felt like a dungeon. So it would when I would tell people, I would always say a dungeon. Like I said, when you think back, hindsight's, heck of a thing, right? And there was a window way high up. So I'm like, okay. And then, I kind of I'm a history nerd because of that. It led me on to like medieval and Renaissance, like where what time were they locking people in dungeons kind of thing. And there were, back then a lot of towers that people were being kept in as dungeons. So the fact that I knew that as a kid was kind of creepy because I sure didn't know that when I was 11.
Right. Sometimes you just kind of get that knowledge like from the supernatural world. Also, what I found really interesting is the fact that you were saying "mama" the way you would never say it, and this is also like one of the things that's proving that it was like a really interesting supernatural experience. The fact that you were saying it like differently or maybe in a different language. It does prove that you were kind of like seeing what other children were experiencing, and I
Yeah.
found that part of the story extremely interesting. Um, you know,
One of the things that clearly stuck out because I'm like, no, I was mom, constantly mom, or if you wanted something, mother, mommy, but not mama. I was like, that's weird. I didn't say that. That's one
Yeah,
of the things that caught me immediately. You know, when you're a passenger and listening, that's really all you can do is listen. So I'm like, I'm not saying that. That was nuts.
wow, that must have been really scary. Yeah, you know what I also wanted to ask is, so during the ritual, if I'm understanding this correctly, you sort of like closed your eyes and you started like seeing and like you appeared in a dungeon, right?
Yeah, it happened like immediately because I was holding, my eyes were closed and I was holding their hands. So as far as what, they did beforehand, I wish I could remember because I don't. I just thought it was a bunch of silliness, so I didn't even give it the care to pay attention. And then we're holding hands and my thoughts literally go, this is silly. And then all of a sudden I can't see. And it was almost like I immediately regretted thinking that this is silly because I learned quickly no. And those girls, they didn't feel anything. They just sat there questioning me. And at first, they were telling me after when they were helping with the cocoa and stuff, are you sure you were messing with us? And I was terrified. They were like, that's never happened. And you guys are supposed to know what you're doing. So it was just interesting, I guess.
Exactly. I don't want to blame the girls, but since you mentioned the fact that their parents were into these kinds of things, maybe it
Yeah,
wasn't a coincidence that nothing happened to them. Maybe they sort of knew how to make you enter this weird other world and pulled a prank on
exactly.
you.
Like it's for whatever reason, my parents said they didn't believe me, but sure wouldn't let us hang out with them, or they never even saw the parents again. It was just nobody was talking to them after that. So
Right. Yeah. And I think, your parents did the right thing, honestly. But 'cause, like, I don't know, like, I wouldn't risk it because it is really, really creepy, and especially, considering the fact that their parents had connection with, supernatural things. What it could also mean, maybe those girls did not really have, like, this supernatural, what I call gift, and maybe you did. So maybe that's why they didn't feel anything, and you were the chosen one to actually, get this experience. Um or, maybe one of the spirits got upset at you for thinking that it's silly.
exactly, like it could, whatever it is. Yeah, I was the one that night that had to feel that. That's what it was. So I did learn it wasn't silly. That's for sure. So
Wow.
I said that I learned immediately to regret that statement. This is so silly. No, it wasn't.
Yeah, I think this is incredible. What I also wanted to ask, like when you were saying all these things that you thought weren't you, right? Did you also feel like maybe your body feels different, or it was just more like just saying some things that don't
Oh
belong to you?
no, everything that boy was feeling, I knew it. I felt the hunger. It was so thirsty. I could feel the chappedness. My throat was dry. It was hard to speak. And not to mention the pain in my leg, like for the rest of the night, even after I came to, my parents had to keep telling me your leg is fine. It was horrible. Like I felt everything. I wasn't me. It was almost like I got sucked to him. Everything he was feeling and saying, I was just a conduit for. And it was insane because even after I became me again, for lack of better words, I still felt it. No amount of like drinks made my throat feel better. No, it was, I wish I could have just been like maybe sitting there. No, whatever that boy was, that was horrible. And like I said, that's what led me on like research because I was like, this has to be a joke. People don't do this to children. And that's kind of what led me to, oh, yes, they do. When you get into history for things. And I mean, other than like, kids would know like witches and wizards from like TV, but this wasn't something that I had ever thought about when the word wizard came to my head. So that was interesting.
Yeah, when we think of the word wizard, we usually think, these guys in like, purple like outfit, they're casting some kind of spells. and you don't necessarily think of them as like super super evil, or you don't really think of these kinds of things. And I'm really glad you're bringing this up. Um, and also, based on like some supernatural experiences, we can say that when something horrible happens, when someone is dying in some kind of bad and unnatural way, there is a possibility that their spirits might actually stay here on Earth, trying to communicate what happened to them. Um, so so maybe you became the sort of a person who got all this information. Maybe those spirits actually wanted to say something, and also, based on like research and other things that people are saying, you know, all these ghosts are stuck on Earth who have like unfinished business, or who simply want to, tell others what happened to them. Once they actually do that, like once they complete the thing that they were supposed to do, they can actually, find peace and go to heaven, or where they're supposed to be. So maybe, even though it was a very traumatizing experience for you, maybe you helped those spirits in a way to find peace. Do you think that's a possibility?
It would be nice because all I knew and felt was fear. So if that boy got some kind of relief, even for it felt like an eternity, but what, maybe 5, 10 minutes, of my life. So if that helped him, then great, because nobody should have to go through what that kid did. And so yeah, if it brought him some peace, then that's okay. But we wanted like a name, and we couldn't get that. That's just fear. We couldn't get anything else out of him. Just wants and fear. Where's my mama? Bring me home. Set me free.
Wow.
Other than that, there's been, like I said, I've had dreams, and I've helped, warned people. So there's definitely things where we're being shown for a reason, you know, whether it's closure or whatever. But I'd like to think that, yeah, maybe that brought that boy closure. I'd like to think that.
Yeah. Also, let's get into these dreams a little bit. So, you're saying that, you're having like dreams that then come true, right?
Oh yeah. I don't, every time I've told anybody, it's always came true. So I don't tell anybody anymore. Um, it was a couple of months after that uh, episode with the girls. Um, I had a dream that I watched my two cousins drown. I just stood there and watched them, and I didn't do anything. And when I woke up, I told my mom, and she was, it's a dream. But exactly a week later, the very next Saturday, my aunt showed up crying. The boys were fishing with their friends, and the younger of the siblings got stuck in the water. So the older sibling went in to help them, and the water got really deep, and they drowned each other. And their friends didn't know what to do. So they stood there watching, just like I did in the dream.
Oh my
And
God.
my aunt to this day won't speak to me. I don't know why. I was a kid that had a dream. But my aunt kind of felt that I caused that because I said exactly. And then couple no more than 2 years later, I didn't know the baby was born yet. She was born that night. But I dreamt my cousin Leanna, but it was her cousin Deanna that was born. Leanna was laying in the bed, and just a light came from the sky and took her away right out of her bed. And in the morning, when I woke up, I found my mom crying over her coffee. She told me her sister had a baby and she died in the middle of the night. She died the very night she was born. And so I don't really tell people
Yeah.
when I dream that. Like, and I'm in nursing school, right? And they make you study dreams in psychology. And they say dreams are always opposite, right? So if I dream death, that should be life, but that's not how my dreams work. So I keep a journal, a dream journal. I've done it for decades. And my dreams I always write in there
Wow.
because they're never nothing.
Yeah.
And the dreams, and I only do for myself, but oracle cards I'll use. But and intuition is off the hook. Like people, I only go by energies. Like like this day and age, people, a lot of people will hurt you on purpose. So you kind of like my husband's the opposite of me. You have to prove you could be trusted, for example. Me, I'm not. If I get good energy from you, until you prove to me otherwise, I'm feeling whatever energy you're putting out, and that's what I'll retort. And that's kind of how I live my life now because I didn't know it at that time, but that's exactly what I experienced with energy transfer. You know, I wasn't me. So I kind of live my life on that now because too many things I can peg as right, to where just say, oh, the woman's a tuition. No, it's more than
Yeah, it definitely sounds like an incredible supernatural ability or a superpower. You know, one thing I wanted to say, but first of all, I'm really sorry that you had all these experiences. It must have been really hard. But what happens usually with like historically, people who delivered like bad news to the kings and things like that, you know, they were getting killed. And this is a weird psychological thing where people kind of blame the person who's delivering bad news versus, the actual bad thing that happened, which is really unfortunate, but it's just the way it happens sometimes with some people. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, I think it's really incredible that you have a lot of dreams and like they come true. And I think like you said about like the opposite thing, I think it's more for people who don't really have those supernatural powers. I think it's for people who are just, purely psychological, and maybe they're thinking about something, they're worrying about a thing, they dream about the opposite thing. But when it comes to like someone who is actually connected with like the energies and things like that, they actually dream whatever is, supposed to happen. Another thing that you brought up, which was very interesting, is energy. And I like saying in these podcasts that we are completely surrounded by energy. Everything is an energy. Like even like some objects, they carry some kind of history or energy. And it is really important to quote unquote read the room and like see what kind of energy emanates from a person or even a place, even like an inanimate object. I think it really is important. And when you have this sort of gift, I think it really might help you in life. So I guess one question that I have for you is, what was the most interesting type of like energy or dream you ever had that came true? What was like the most interesting and unusual thing?
I would definitely have to go with my death dreams, even though I already spoke them. But those ones happen exactly how I dream them, exactly. And that that used to terrify me. Now I kind of find it fascinating. But I've dreamt of promotions, firings, things. I've dreamt that I'm driving to work and the car breaks and my car's perfectly fine. But next week, my husband's driving to work and he gets a flat tire on the way. So it's not always me, but it might be me in my dreams. But it's usually, and it's also interesting because I have to tell somebody about my dreams. That's when I just write them, it's like I don't speak them into existence or something. But the dreams that I tell people, like if I wake up like, oh, my husband will be like, what? And I just immediately tell him, it's almost never fails. It could be something really little, but I haven't dreamt of anybody dying in a while, which is good. It's usually little things like I dreamt the hood flew up on me, and then my husband got a car, a flat tire. So either way, one of us were late to work. Is how that worked. But it's always me in my dreams. It's never anybody else. I'm always viewing it as the first person in my dreams.
Wow, this is interesting. And I guess like, going back to like your very first experience and connecting it with the dreams, uh, would you say that so you're saying you're always in like you're always you. Is it always like your body in the dream, or it's more like your experience as a child where you can like sort of feel the physicality of a person that is going to happen with?
It's definitely more like definitely childlike because I can feel everything and know everything, and what kid don't, right? But as I've gotten older, I've also learned to know when I'm dreaming, which is my husband's really jealous of that actually, because I can direct my dreams. Now, I'll be like, no, something's off. Like you say, things you taste, smell, hear. In dreams, they're always off. You just don't really realize it, because you're dreaming. And it took me a while, but it was my mother, surprisingly, who helped me do that a couple years after she died. Because it just, her death hit me really hard. It really did. And
Mhm.
I kept dreaming of going to her house. This might be one of my more profound dreams. And I kept going to her house. And then after about a couple years of this dream, one day my mom, you oh, like always in my dream, she's in the hospital bed in the living room. Of course, in my dream, that never seemed weird to me. Why wasn't she in her room, But dreams. And she looks at me and she's like, "Why are you here?" And I'm like, "I'm visiting you." She's like, "But I'm not here. Why are you here?" And in that moment, I knew I was dreaming. And I was like, "Mom," me and my mom was a little trucker mouth. So I'm like, "Did you really F and die?" That's what I said to her. And she was like, "Yeah." And I just was crying in the dream. And that helped me to understand that she really did pass. And I couldn't, perhaps I was holding her here by constant, forcing this repetitive, like she's still sick and at home. That's not what my mom would have wanted. So that was a very lucid dream where my mother definitely came to talk to me. Like, no, I'm not here. A lot of things have progressed since those days with those girls. Whereas as a kid, I was a good little church girl. Nothing like this existed. So
Yeah.
careful what you wish for, I guess,
Yeah, I think
right?
so. Yeah.
Silly, nothing will happen. So
Yeah.
careful what you wish for.
No, honestly, I think it's a great expression. A lot of people don't really fully realize what they're actually wishing for. Uh, but I think it's incredible that you learned how to use your gifts and you learn to control your dreams and even be aware that you're like dreaming at the moment. And I think this is absolutely incredible. I think there are like actual techniques on how to do that. Like basically, what people say, they're like, you have to just walk around your house and be like, I'm dreaming, I'm dreaming, I'm dreaming. Am I dreaming right now? Just keep constantly asking yourself if you're dreaming at the moment. And then maybe like it will get recorded in your brain. And next time you're dreaming,
Yep.
you'll ask yourself this question. And it'll be like, oh, as a matter of fact, I am because it rains like not from the sky, but from the ground up. So
It's always something different. That's it. And until you really learn to look for that, you don't see that exactly. But the fact that, yeah, I've had all of these things happen to me that I had to start being like, okay, can we control any of this? And James, my dreams are, kind of powerful. So yeah, that was what I had to learn to control. And of course, I don't do any more seances. I've learned that too.
yeah.
Because I always thought that there was a reason why, that kid chose me and not either of those girls. There was three of us. So I'm like, I don't think I want to, be the guinea pig again.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't sound like a good idea. Yeah. But what I also wanted to ask is, do you know that you're gonna dream something like before you go to bed, or can you sort of do something in order to have a dream, or it just kind of happens
Oh
spontaneously?
yeah. No, I could definitely control the flow of dreams if I want to. I just got to sit and think about what it is that I want to end up in my dreamland, for lack of better words. Because, like I said, my mother affected me, so it really makes me happy, for lack of better words, to visit my mom. And I dream about stupid stuff all the time. You think I'm like a 5-year old, so I'm exaggerating, but it's like if I want to have a serious dream with my mom, I have to plan that. I have to be like, okay, um, mom's going to come here, or maybe she wouldn't like it back at her house. So we never do that anymore. But for some reason, I've never seen this house, but whenever I dream, plan to dream and visit my family that has passed and whatnot, it's always in the same house. And I was originally born in Florida, and that's the vibe I get because we're by a beach and stuff. And my mom did want to retire on a beach, and I hate the cold weather. I'm in Chicago. So that probably would make sense that I would make some kind of, beach house. But yeah, I sit and I kind of plan it. And then I never just, but I don't plan the house. I don't know where that came from. But my mother will be there. The sister that never speaks to me, she'll be there. I can really control the flow of dreams. And then if at any point during that dream, I lose my focus, for lack of better words, and then the dream will go wherever it wants. Same characters, but I no longer control the narrative. It's I could always start it, but I have to stay lucid through it if I want to control the whole story. And sometimes it's nice just to let your brain control the narrative.
Interesting. That's super amazing. And would you say like how
Kind of cool. I,
often?
I love dreaming.
Yeah, I can tell. And honestly, like dreaming is amazing. Unfortunately, I can't control my dreams, but whenever I get like a really
And my
lucid dream,
husband, he like is so jealous of that. I'm like, I love dreaming.
yeah, it's really amazing, especially when you get like a really lucid one, when you sort of like almost appear in a different reality, and that really seems incredible. Yeah. How often? I just have like one more follow up question for you, and I'll let you go. How often do you have these dreams? As often as you want? Is it like every night, multiple times a week?
Like I said, to control the dreams, I need to be able to think about it, right? And a lot of times I'm bloody tired, right? Like I work as a nurse, that's what I did. So I think I did. So a lot of times I'll just be tired and I'll be like, I'm going to bed. And whether or not you dream that night, that's up to whoever, But um I'd say at least a couple times a month, I check in with my mom, for lack of better words. I don't really know why I don't check in with my dad, but it's always my mom. My mom's the one I miss. She was my best friend. So, yeah, at least a couple times a month, I'm like, I miss my mom. And then, it's the only time I can see my mom. So that's what we do.
Wow, incredible. All right then. Yeah, I guess we're wrapping up for now. Is there anything
Yes.
else you want to share with the audience? Maybe like promote your social media or just give us a message?
Uh, Definitely trust your instincts and know that there are things out there you don't see or understand. It doesn't make them any less real than what people call reality. Because what happened to me with that boy and what happens to me in dreams, they're undistinguishable from what people call reality. That's embedded in my brain just as me going to work today. It happened. You can't convince me otherwise. And just, I mean, yeah, the little things that people like, that house after that scenario, there would be the cabinets opening. Yeah, I mean, whatever that was brought something, whether it was to me or to the house, but it definitely opened a door. So, and also don't do anything if you don't know what it is, because that was my mistake. I was
Yeah.
completely naive and had no idea what I was doing. So,
Yeah, 100%. I always I always, like, feel, so uncomfortable when I see, like, some teenagers doing, like, some, weird spiritual, like, stuff, rituals, things like that. I'm
yeah.
like, "You don't know what you're doing. Don't do that."
That's
It's
like
best not to
people,
risk it.
they'll ask me like to do like, I don't do the tarot cards, but oracle cards. And I'm like, no, I only read for myself. It's a personal thing, because I feel energy way too much, you know, and what's bothering you is going to collapse me. I'm going to feel it 10 times more than you do. If you come around me sad, I'm going to bed crying that night. And I don't even know why. So there's definitely energies that we don't know.
Wow. I've heard that it can be really emotionally draining for people who are doing tarot or astrology.
Uh,
Yeah, I think it's just the fact that, people with these supernatural abilities, they're kind of more sensitive to energy, and it can be really, really draining for them to do that. So I think you're doing a very smart thing by, not letting anyone, give you
Yeah.
bad energy and things like that. So I think it's really smart of you to do that. But thank you so much for doing this podcast. It was truly amazing to hear all
Yeah.
these supernatural
Thank you.
experiences. Super nice talking to you. Thank you so much.
It was nice to tell someone besides my brother, husband, and son. So appreciate it.
Absolutely. I totally understand. This is one of the reasons why we're doing it. So you're always welcome. And if there's anything else that comes up, just let me know and we can even do like a couple more of these if there's anything else you want to share.
Okay. Definitely. Thank you.
Awesome.
All
Thanks
right.
so
Have
much.
a good night.
Bye bye. You too.
Bye.